This is my documentation to re-spline my springs on my Eagle 10, 1985. And I know this is going to take a long time, but I want to try to document this and get it out there for all the Eagle owners so they know what's going on with this. What I'm attempting to do is to re-spline the spring, the torsion bar. As you can see, I'm out of thread. I'm all the way up, so I have no adjustment left. My springs are in good condition because I leveled my coach back in 2016 and everything is held up for the correct height since then. So it's been 4 years since I did this. So even though my springs are kind of ragged on the end right here, that doesn't mean they failed. They're still in pretty good shape. My shackles are in good condition as far as I can tell. Everything down here looks good. So before I start this, there's a lot of things that need to be done. So actually what's going to happen here when I do this, this is going to come off, and this bolt is going to, the spring will the hole in the spring will not change. This slot will have to be made bigger because I'm going to take this off and rotate this to where this will come all the way back and start over like it was a new spring. So before anyone wants to do this, there's a bunch of things that need to be done. And the main thing is you need to know if your springs are still good. So my recommendation would be to do what I did, re-index your coach just by adjusting what you have left on your threads. Get it there and let it run it for a couple of years. And then if you want to do this, do it after that so you know if it holds. So my coach is at 14 inches according with the book specs, which is measured from right under here, under that, what is that, 1.5 inches by 1 inch, 2. The book spec for the front also is 14, which is where my coach is. So I'm 14 to this rail right here, to the ground, all the way around. So what we're trying to accomplish here is to get these springs back out and get this configuration on the shackle arm, adjustment arm. We want this 32 degrees angle, 14 to 14 and 3, or 14 and a half or so to 14 and 3/4 max. I also measured right here on the cross member that runs 8 feet across the bus, and I got 14 and 7/8. It's a little bit higher because it doesn't have the tubing underneath it. That measurement's important. That will be important when we put this stuff back together. So now I have the drive shaft disconnected, and now I need to take the shocks off, and I've got the brake drum off and the brakes off. So I need to go ahead and clean these threads up and draw this up so this thing will relax. Both sides here, you can see that. And now I can get to the bolts. Let me see if I can get you a better light here. Get to this bolt right there. I'm probably gonna take a 10-foot bar to get it off. You can see I got some of this drag torsion bar, or whatever this is called, the anti-sway bar. I've got one of those off. These are all loose. They're actually all out. It's ready to drop. I've got to go up to the front, and if you can see that, I got to get that off and drop that whole bar out of there. I've got my brakes caged on this side. I haven't done the other side yet. The drive shaft is dropped and ready. Haven't disconnected the air lines because the other brake is locked, because I had to lock the wheel to get those bolts off over there on the drive shaft. So I'm moving right along. It's going well. The bolts are hard. One of the bolts on the drive shaft was stripped and loose. So I had to pull it out and cut it. So I'll have to find a new one of those. I'll just keep going. This is my configuration to break those 12-point bolts, the special bolts that are holding the springs to the axle. That's my tire changing tool, and put the bar in there, and then I've got this pipe here 8 feet long to break that. They're pretty easy to break actually. It's not too hard, so I have to break this one and 3 more. This is my nut breaking tool. 12.78 socket. I welded it to an old lug nut and use it in the tire braking tool. It works really well. And then once I get them broken, then I can just take them off with the 3/4 inch impact and spin them right out. I want to clarify these measurements that I talked about as I was trying to show you on the coach. This measurement right here from on the cross beam that goes across the bus, on my bus, is 14 7/8 inches, which corresponds to my 14 inches on these rails. So this is a target point for me to use to set the spring, or the ride height for when I put the spring back in after it's adjusted. So that's an important measurement for me. And also the measurement from the bottom of the torsion bar to the ground with the wheels on is 24 inches on my coach. I have 24.5 inch wheels, and I don't think that'll change on any Eagle coach. So that's another reference point that I need to have, because I'm going to use that when I put it back together. And then in indexing the shackle arm, adjustment arm, the book calls for 14.5 to 14 3/4 from this point, measured from here down to the plane of the mounting bracket. I don't want to go any higher than that, because if I do, it will place the spring, it'll rotate this out of level, and I'll have to put the spring under tension to get it to draw up to the bolts, with the bolts on the flange of the axle. And that will be next to impossible to do. I'll have to throw it so far out of level, because the axle will want to be like this and the spring will be like this, or vice versa. It'll just be next to impossible. So I'm shooting for 14 3/8 to 14. It's probably going to be less, whatever, but it'll be close enough. So I wanted to clarify those before I move on, so you kind of know where I'm at on this. So now I have the axle, or the spring, sitting on the bottom of the stops. You can see that right there. So all of the pressure is taken off of the springs, and they're sitting on the stops of the coach. See that one right there? Barely. Come dark. The jacks are not holding any weight. The torsion bar is taken loose. I haven't dropped it off yet. I want to get these drawn down to see, well, because I'm going to have to raise these springs up real high in order to get the axle out of there. And when I get these, that way when I pipe them back up, there won't be any pressure on the springs. They're not going to hold anything, because they're going to be drawn all the way up. So let me see. Oh. Here's my wrench I made, 1 7/8. Let's see how these do. Kind of hard to hold the camera. I'm going the wrong way. Let me set this down. Hope you can see that. There they go. So I'm going to take these all the way up on both sides. See how the other one does. Oh yeah, no problem. Can y'all see that? Yeah. Oh! Okay, I'm going to take them all the way up on both sides. And then I'm going to take this anti-sway bar off on this side. And I'm going to stick a pallet in there under the axle. So when I take the springs off, the thing doesn't drop to the floor. I have to hold that up somewhere. So I'll be back in a little while. Okay, I'm back. I've got the nuts drawn up on the torsalatics. Didn't go all the way up on that one. I don't think I need to really go up that high. I don't know where they're already relaxed. When I was drawing them up, the spring was coming, the spring arm was swinging up with it, and it went up about 1 inch. So it's in full relaxed mode. I've got the sway bar off on the other side. I'm going to drop this one right now, and all 8 of the 12-point special nuts are cracked. And so when I get this sway bar off, I'm going to break away here and build me a pallet with a cradle to hold the entire rear end, and pick that thing up with a pallet jack, and then unscrew all 8 bolts and release this from the springs. And I'll have to jack the springs up all the way to the top to slide that out from underneath. So let me set this thing right here, and I'm going to drop this thing real quick. Well, it didn't fall like I wanted it to. Let me see here. Come on, baby. There it went. Alright, it's off. So I'll get that thing out of the way. That was a bear to get off, those 2 sway bars, just because you can't get to the nuts. 1 1/16 nut head, and an 1 1/8 nut head, and an 1 1/16 nut, or 1 1/8 bolt head. They were tough to get off of there, especially up in the front. So got those off. Work on my pallet now, and then release the air lines. I still have to get the shocks off. That won't take long. So we're moving right along. The axle is now loose from the springs. You can see where it broke its bond right there, and it's the spring twisted a little bit. It's actually out of alignment. The bracket dropped to the floor. There's the bolts. Thank you, Eagle, for putting never sees on there, so they came right out. I'm sitting on a pallet jack. I lifted everything up, and I lifted it up with a spring so it'll hold it. But I've got it down now where the springs are bottomed out on the frame over here. I got to go do the other side, and then I'll be completely loose. At that point, I'll pick the springs all the way up to the top and brace them up there, and then bring this thing out. I've got 2 inches of clearance, I think. 2 inches of clearance from the top of this to the bottom of the spring when it's up, I hope. according to my calculations. So far everything's going good. It's coming out of there. Okay, so now I have the axle away from the springs. The springs are propped up all the way to the stops. And hopefully we have enough clearance for the handle of the pallet jack to get this thing out of here. Had a little too much weight on the front, had to put an extra dolly here. You can see all of that sitting there. So we are going to try to take this thing out. Okay, you're going to have to start turning toward the back of the shop. Okay, hang on, stop. Keep turning toward the back. Keep turning. Now you can start coming straight. Can you see it? You have to. Come on out. Okay, that's good. Okay, you're going to have to start turning toward the back of the shop. Okay, hang on, stop. Keep turning toward the back. Keep turning. Now you can start coming straight. Can you see it? You have to. Come on out. Okay, that's good. Well, we got it out. Got it over to the other side of the shop. Got a leak here. It's in this one here, so while I've got it out, I'm going to take care of all these issues, clean this thing up, and everything else looks good, fortunately. So that's, probably won't see any more of this thing. That'd be for another video. So now on to the springs. Now that the axle is out, I have a lot of room in here to work. So now it's time to get these springs out. I still haven't taken the shocks off. Left them on just to get a little more stability in case something kind of got loose and dropped or whatever. So now we got to work on these shackles. I'm going to try to get at least one off just to have one so I can, in case I have to cut the rest. And then I'll probably go ahead and just buy these. I can probably get them at Fastenal or somewhere. So you can see where this didn't move on this side. This is the street side. But over on the other side, it pulled up a little bit because I jacked up the axle. I had to move something. I had to jack up the axle after I moved that nut up the thread. So it actually slid up, which makes it looser. So it actually lower the coach. So anyway, I'm going to start getting these off and I'll be back later. So I've got all the bolts out of the shackles, and That came out pretty easy. I unscrewed all 8 on each side here, each end of the torsion bar. I was really surprised. I thought I'd have to burn them out of there with a torch. So the springs are still sitting on the stops. The end of the torsion bars are sitting on the stops there. And I pried this away from the shackle, the other half shackle half, and I need it to drop. It's dropping down. You can see the arm is dropping down. That has to go below this so I can pull this thing out and get it underneath the ends of the fender well. So I've been wiggling this thing and it's kind of coming down. I'm not sure why it's not falling down like I thought it would. So I'm going to work it down, get it down and get it on the pallet jack and get it out of here and get it over to the workbench. So here is my hillbilly torsalastic spring remover. Let's see how this is going to work. I don't know. I'm going to let it down here. Wait, I got to pull it forward a little bit. Oh, it fell there. That's good though. I want it down there. So now I'm going to let it down as far as I can. Okay, I'm on the ground now. All right, now I got to put a jack underneath there and pull some blocks out and get it below the fender of the bus. Okay, so I stepped it down with my little bottle jacks and took the blocks out and all of that. I nearly had a real issue right there. That was sticking out and it hung on that, and fortunately I had enough room to move it forward toward the front of the bus to get that thing to drop. So be aware of that. Keep that plane clear. So this rascal's ready to roll out. Let's see if I can get it out of here. Oh yeah. You can see that the arms are, I mean, they're, wow. This thing is heavy. I don't know how much it weighs. I need to get it up on the table. I'm gonna have to use a forklift to get it up, I guess. But it is pretty heavy. So we're out. That's one. Do the other one later. I'm going to take this apart. Now the fun begins. One thing I want to do is clean up these holes. And I found out that on the shackle in here, this is 15/32, and on the torsion bar shackle, it's 29/64. So I want to clean up all these holes with a drill bit. Don't forget to do that if you do it, to try to make this thing go back in there easier. The spring or the adjustment arm is ready to remove now. But first I've got to draw this up all the way to here while it's on there, because I haven't need enough leverage to do that, because you know, I always have trouble greasing this thing. Here's the grease fittings for the movement right here. And I have a hard time forcing grease in there, so I don't know what this is going to be like right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spray PB Blaster in here while I'm cranking that nut on those threads, and also in here and on the other side, and break it loose. Once it's broken loose, I'll be able to get grease in there, you know, and it'll be much easier to put back and grease from now on, and keep it wet with grease from now on, because I grease it every 6,000 miles. So I'm going to draw this up, and I will be back and show you how I pull it off. In the previous two images, I showed you the puller I made, and also in here the little circle. It's the pushing device. So I'm going to see how this works. It's coming. There it is. All right. So all that's going to come off. Now, let's move this. And there you have it. You can see all the never sees on there, this device, and that's how you get it off. That's it. Okay, so I'm ready to put this thing back on, and I wanted to show you what I've done here. This is the original setting right here when I took the bolt out. This is going to be my new setting. I had to cut a hole there to raise this up. And see what's happened here. Pull over here. What I've got is I've drawn my bolt all the way up. This is the setting for the factory for when it's new, which this is supposed to be like right around 1/16 of an inch, this gap right here. So this is drawn all the way up. These are my new threads that I'll have. You can see the spline in here. And this setting, now that it's drawn up but it's not moved yet, is from the floor 48. So right now I'm sitting, my measurement, this is my floor, so I have to add that measurement to it. I'm 40 and a quarter off the floor right here. Plus 14 would be 54 and 5/8. Well, you can see I'm not anywhere near 54 and 5/8. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to raise the spline. I'm going to pull this off, and you can see this slides right off like that. There's the spline. Put it back on there, raise it up. I've got it indexed with the mark. That's too high. I got to go down one. Still looks too high. What's going on? Oh, we can get it. Well, it went in easy a while ago. Go ahead and cut it. Turn it off. Okay, after wrestling with it, I've got it in there. So I'm right there. Now the bolt will go in there. So now remember, my target is 54 and 5/8 from the floor. So if I measure right here to the center line of that, I'm at 54. I tried to go one more spline, but it put me at 55 and 3/4. I can't go that high. So I'm gonna run it at 54 and call it a day on that. So this one is done and it's ready to go. All I have to do is tighten the bolt up and move to the other side. That one hadn't been done yet. You can see over here that I haven't drawn my threads up yet. And when I do, this will come down to here like that. And I'll re-index it, bring it up to 54. It should match the other one. And I'll be done with this spring. I went ahead and pulled it back off again. I forgot to put the never sees on there. When I took this off, this spline was covered in never sees. So that's a good thing. Eagle did that, I guess, at the factory or whoever put this on. And so it's all slathered up. And also when I moved this bolt up, you know, it pulled all this and turned everything. I always had trouble greasing this and really hard to pump grease in there. And now everything's broken loose, so grease came out all over the place. I pumped grease in there and it came out here, it came out all around here, all the way around. Same thing here, I pumped grease in there, it comes out all over the place. Now, this one I don't really care about much. You can just shoot some, I can't get really grease to go in there. Just shoot some PB Blaster on here because this thing doesn't move that much actually. I mean, it probably moves a little bit, I don't think it's that important. So now it's really done. I'm going to put it back on and tighten up the bolt and flip this whole spring around and do the other side, and it should be finished. The spring is ready to go back in now. I got the other one out. It is over there on the fork getting clean. So I need my little table, so I got to get this thing under here. Looks like I'm going to have to tilt it or drag it or do something to get it to fit under the fender. I'll figure something out. I'm going to get in there and start the installation and see if I can get it back up on the shackles, and we'll see what happens. There is no easy way to do this. So let's see what we can do here. Okay, I got it in there, but I had to jack the bus up 3 inches to get that thing to go through there. Haven't found an easy way yet, so now I'll position it and see if I can get it up right. Okay, so I got it in there, and this pallet jack is definitely my best friend. And I don't know how many blocks of wood. I use my tie down straps to hold this thing up and keep it in the right place. I am ready to engage it with the shackle now, and I slathered up the mating surfaces with never sees to try to stop some of that corrosion. So you can see all that. Oops, right there. And we'll pull it up together and see what happens. So I'm working on the second spring and I got one side off, but I could not adjust the arm. So this is probably what happens when you don't grease this thing. So I threw it in a bucket of used oil to see if I can get some of this loose. I can't get grease in it. I tried penetrating oil and I could not draw out this screw. I mean, I had a 6-foot pipe on it and I was having a tough time turning it. I'm gonna let that soak a couple of days and see what happens, and I'll work on the other side for now. Well, here it is 4 days later after I put it in the bucket, and I tried to put it on there and crank that bolt. After soaking it in oil, it still wouldn't move, so I tried some other things. I took this and loosened this and cracked this just a little bit. Took this off, I had to heat that and tried to knock that just to open this and give it some release some of this pressure here. None of that really helped. So I took it back off, put it in a bucket of diesel overnight and put it back up there. And I cranked it up far enough. I only went to here, and I set the other side with this measurement right there. So both of them are equal. And in doing what I was doing with the nut, I messed up my threads. I messed up my nut, so I had to go buy a new nut. And I had to order a thread cutter, so I'm going to redo these threads on this and get that cleaned up. And I found something else here. It looks like somebody had been messing with this thing before, because they cut that with a grinder while they were trying to cut a bolt off. So I'm going to put a bead of weld on this and try to clean it up. So I got that bit in there. That may be ductile iron, I don't know, that could be problematic, but oh well, it's held all these 20 years for me, so I'm just going to try to fix it. But it's amazing what you find on these things when you take them apart and start doing stuff to them. So I've got the height set, and I need to drill the hole. Let me see if you can see that. I'm just off just a little bit, so I got to cut a slot there. Get all that cleaned up, get it painted, and try to shoot as much grease in there as I can. It still doesn't want to take grease very well. I've been pumping and trying to do that. So after I get my thread cutter, I can get this nut back on here, draw that up, tighten everything down, and send it back to the coach. So I got all the issues fixed over there on the bench, and everything is put back together. It's all lubed up, painted, and ready to go. And this time I dragged it over here and took it off of the table and removed that little carrier. And this way it will go underneath the fender wells. I think this is going to be so much easier than what I went through last time. So I'm going to drag it in there and start jacking it up and see if I can get this thing put back together. This one is going in so much easier than the other one. Should have done the other one this way, but I guess you gotta learn. Okay, so I got it up in there and lifted it up and got it in place. I've got my new Dyna shackles on there. That's what they sent me. And with all that rubber in there, boy, they're hard to get the bolts through. So they didn't quite, the holes were off just about an eighth, so I had to put this board on there and loosen up the retainer bolts on those big bolts that hold the arm on there. Loosen all that up so I could push that out just a hair, and it worked just fine. So I've got all the bolts in there. I don't have them all cranked down. I've got a concern here, because if you look at this, I don't know if you can see it. See how it's out of plane? You can't really tell. This is not level. And it's got to be level to get it on the axle, and it's as far down as it can go. So I was told that that's going to be a fight. So I'm not going to put all these bolts and tighten them all down. I want to leave this a little loose in case I have to turn something here. So we are ready to drag the axle in here and see how this is all going to go back together. So I got the curbside done. It took me about 3 hours to line up those 12-point bolts and get them in there and draw that flange up. So you can see how far I had to lift that up over there out of plumb or out of level to get it to match with this. I don't know what's going to happen on the other side, but we're going to find out here probably in a day or so. So I'm going to clean up stuff and I think call it a day and come back later and do the other side. So it's the next day, and I've got the other side put in there. It took me 4 hours or so. So let me fix this. So this one, you know, I can't show you here. Let me see. This right here, where's my hand? This mounting flange, that's for the anti-sway bar. This was sitting up. Let's see, this had a gap here and I was closed here. So I had to jack up the other side really high to get that coplanar. And I had to disconnect. I did only put 2 bolts in this thing here on the shackle. I ran a 3/8 bolt through there just so it'd be loose, and I undid the 7/16 bolt, the socket head screws, and pulled that away. I had to put that strap on there to pull the spring towards the fender to get the holes to line up. And then I had to put this silly thing in there, just a piece of channel across there, and press down on the axle while I lift it up on the other side to try to get that thing coplanar. So now I've got all of my bolts in this side, but I don't have them tightened down. I just have them, you can see they need to be pulled up. So I think that they'll go up when I release everything. I think it's going to do that. And so I got to put all the bolts in over here. You can see they're missing some. So I'm going to do that. So all in all, putting that side on yesterday took me over 4 hours. And I'm at least 4 hours on this one. And I've got my jack under there. I've got this jack here to push down on the axle to get it out of level so I could get it coplanar with the spring. So this is pretty hard, but it's all done. Woohoo! Got it all back in there, and I'm going to tighten it all down and see how it all works out. I now have all the spring hardware tightened up. These are all pulled down. They pull down pretty good. On this side, I have jacked the bus up. If you remember back in the very first video segment, this was 24 inches from the bottom of this to the floor. That simulates the tires on the axle. That's my measuring board right there. So I've got this set at 24 inches, and I have taken it off the frame. I've taken the frame off of the blocks. You can see that the blocks are removed. I'm jacked up. I've got it jacked up real high right now. I am going to drop it to simulate a bump in the road to see what happens here. I hope I can do this where you can see it. I don't know. I'll try. All right, let's get it right here and see what happens. That's the best I could do. It's not very good. Okay, so now, if you remember from the first, my measurement here at the cross beam was 14 7/8, and that's what we're looking for. So we're at 14. Oh, can you see it? 14 and almost 15. That's close enough. So I hit right on the first try. That is good. And I'm still, you know, I can see I'm 24 inches there. That'll just under 24, about maybe 23 7/8. That's all good. Everything's good over here. Everything's good on that side. I've measured over there. It's the same. So I think that it worked. It's a victory. So now I'm going to have to put all the hardware and stuff back on the anti-sway bars. That's going to be a real job. Reattach all the brakes and everything. So I think I'll give one more video after I'm done and show you it's all buttoned up, and then I'll take it out for a test drive. Got it all put back together now. It took a whole day to get the anti-sway bars, the shocks, the drive shaft, and the brake drums and the brakes, adjusted the slack adjusters and all of that. And it took me nearly another whole day to get the 4 wheels on there because I had to polish up the wheels, and they were really pretty bad shape as far as the aluminum looked. So we're almost a day and a half or a little bit more just to get from where I was in the last video to here. So now I'm gonna take it out and run it down the road and see what my measurements are, because I know something's gonna settle in somewhere. It'd be very unlikely if it was gonna be perfect. So we'll see what happens after I take it out and run it up and down the road, and I'll come back and post the next video. Well, I came back from my test drive. I drove her about 20 miles and bounced it up and down the road as best I could. And nothing fell off, nothing went bang, boom, or smash, so that's a good sign. And I got it back here in the barn and measured my ride height. And on this side here, on the curb side, I was low by 1 inch from the other side. I was about 13 over here and almost 15 on the other side, on the street side, all the way around. So I have to do something about that. So I can't lower it, so I had to raise this side. So I went in here and cranked these nuts down. You know, you go a ½ an inch, and I raised it 1 inch. So you screw it 1/2 inch. This nut here and the one on the front. And since these things are all lubed up, I was able to do this with the wheels on. All I did was I got my jack, my air over jack, and some blocking, and I jacked the frame up as high as I could until the arms, the torsion bars, rested on the stops, and the wheels were still just barely touching the ground. It was so bad that when I'd open this door here, it was laid over so bad this thing would fly open like that. So I was really laid over. So it's raised up. I'm 14 all the way around, and I'm within a 1/4 inch here. Let's see, on the crossbeam right here, I'm within a 1/4 inch of each other. I'm 15 on that side and 14 7/8. I'm actually 1/8. So I think now I really am done. I'm not going to do anything else to it. My bogey axle, I checked the weight when I got home, and I was 4,600 on this one. So now that I've raised it up 1 inch, it dropped to 4,400. So I probably picked up 200 on the other side, but I'm close enough here. So I'm officially done. So I got a big trip this summer, and I will be back this fall and let you know how it turns out. Well, it's been 7 months now since I did this, and I just came off of a 4.5 month trip, 7,300 miles. I checked all my measurements, and everything's the same as when I left it back in April. So I guess I can declare this a success. Oh, you can see the bolt right there on the rear suspensions, how much thread I've got. So it's pretty much, it's drawn all the way up to the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and post this on YouTube, and hopefully it'll help somebody if they want to do this. It's worked for me, and I'm very happy with it. So thanks for looking.